Good evening, everyone. We are back continuing our Studio Ghibli retrospective. We're up to the 10th film in our retrospective today. We are
Who does
talking
that
about.
song? Listen to your heart.
Listen. Oh, Roxette.
Is it Roxette?
Roxette. Yeah.
I don't know, but I was like, yeah.
Well, not Listen to Your Heart, Whisper of the Heart, 1995 film directed by Yoshifumi Kondo. I'm probably pronouncing that absolutely horrifically. Bit of a tragic story about the director. This was his one and only film that he directed. He was meant to be the successor of the studio after Miyazaki left. It was going to go to him, basically, the director of this film. And he tragically passed away on January 21st, my birthday, in 1998. He was only 47 and he had an aneurysm and died. Rumors are that he was overworked by the studio and all of the massive workload to get all these films out. So it's tragic, obviously, what happened to him, but also the fact that he was able to
point out that Ozzy played his last gig with Parkinson's, so no one's got a fucking excuse.
But
I mean, he did die 2 weeks later, but still.
He did. But considering this is his one and done movie, he was a character animator, I think, on Princess Mononoke, which we'll be talking about next week. But I did want to mention that because it is quite tragic, but it's also, as a one and done film, it's outstanding. This is probably one of my favorite Studio Ghibli films that we've seen so far. That we've still got loads left to watch. I think we've got like another 14 after this. So we're going to be doing this for a considerable while, but this really stuck out to me, this one. And it's got some subject matter in there, which I was talking to you earlier that I thought that you'd really appreciate with some of like your own artistic pursuits.
I do. I love the thing, the words you just used. You know what I mean? But I loved all that, and I think the world itself is really cool. I love the whole fantasy element of she does this, she likes fantasy, she does that. Like, do you know what I mean? I love that kind of thing. It's really weird. I mean, it's 2 hours long again, and it's not unwarranted like some of the others, because some of them were fucking long, and it was a bit like, okay, we get it, we don't need to be that long. This not as much, but it was, again, fell into a trap of being quite long. And I don't like to say it's an issue, because I don't think that's like its biggest issue at all. I think it was just, for what it was and the kind of stuff it delved into, that's great. But after an hour and a half, I was like, okay. Do you know what I mean? But to me, I think if I had seen this 10 years ago, I'd been great. But love stories at the moment, they're not resonating with me. I ain't liking them. Anything that's got a love story, I'm like, okay, we get it. Like, cool, fall in love, cool, do your thing. But I want to see cool stuff, not people go, oh, I love you. You know what I mean?
Well, I think there is a lot of cool stuff in this one. I mean, it is a love story fundamentally. It's a coming of age romantic drama film, and I think it's done exceptionally well. It's not quite 2 hours; it's just shy of it, 111 minutes apparently, but it's getting up there. The main thing for me is this one is just finding one's passion or artistic outlet, and storytelling fundamentally is what this film's about. And I know that a lot of the story is, I mean, she's a 14-year-old girl, isn't she? You've got Shizuku, is that her name? Or I'm not going to be able to pronounce the names in this. The main character of the film. And it's all the things you come to expect. She's got a crush on someone at high school, so that high school environment, but we see a lot of her home life as well, and the stresses of life, and that her parents are putting on her the expectation to achieve certain grades, but ultimately the need and want to create and be creative and tell a story. I think it's all wonderfully woven together. I just think it's a fantastic story, ultimately about storytelling.
I think it is done very well together. It's just, I don't know, like I say, if you put it in front of me about 10 years ago, I would have loved it more. And I did like it. I did enjoy it. It's one that, if you had said to me, would you go back to it at this present time, I'd be like, probably not. Like, it was cool to watch once. But I think it would have resonated with me more a few years ago. I just think, look, I don't know what the first thing that did it for me, but I think it's because there's a fucking love story and everything. Now, I understand that's the main point of this. I get that. But there's a love story and everything. It happens too much. I'm like, all right, okay, we get it. Stop falling in love. I don't like people in love. But like it, no, I do think it's it's got a cool message. I do like the characters as well. I think the voice acting is really really great. I obviously watched the dubbed one. I think the voice acting is great in it. I think the chemistry between the characters. I think it's hard to say too many bad things about it. It's just one of those things. It's like turn based gameplay. For me, I now anyway, older games, cool, love it, right? When you've got games like the old Final Fantasy games and stuff, great. But nowadays, there's still an audience for it in these big 3D model games. To me, I'm like, it just doesn't do it for me. Like, there's that game. What was it? I don't know if you heard of it. Expedition 33 or whatever it's called. Turn based. It looks really cool. Everyone was raving about it. I played it for a few hours, and I was like, it's just not for me. I couldn't say anything bad against because it was actually designed very, very well. But again, it was just one of those things where I was like, it's just not feeling it. And I think that's how I felt about this movie at the time. I wouldn't say as an overall, I wasn't feeling it. I just think there was a lot of elements that I was like, yeah, just not for me, you know?
No, that's fair enough. I just really took to this one. I thought the whole romance story was really sweet. I think the voice acting as well, and just the way that Studio Ghibli is able to capture perfectly the emotions of a given age group and the way that people act. We talked about this when we reviewed My Neighbor Totoro, how the little girl in there, I said that Studio Ghibli's, and Grave of the Fireflies as well, they're really good at just capturing the essence of what it is to be that age and the way that they act and their mannerisms and their little quirks and everything. And I think they did that exactly the same in this one. We did have some of that high school drama stuff in Only Yesterday, didn't we, when we reviewed that film?
Yeah,
but I think this was done much better, and this was a lot more engaging for me. And a lot of that is down to the main character herself, Shizuku. I really connected with her character and the struggles that she goes through, and ultimately just trying to find her place in the world. There is that recurring theme that we see in a lot of Studio Ghibli movies, how the world is changing and it's becoming a lot more urbanized, and that's beautifully, exemplified through the main song, which is essentially the main theme of the film, which is Country Road, Take Me Home. And she initially starts to show some of her creative writing side by taking that song and translating the lyrics and putting it in doing like a parody version of it, like a pastiche on it. And she's saying concrete roads take me home, and it's talking about how all of this used to be a forest or fields, and over time it's just become a complete
they should have done that
jungle.
song. What's it? Concrete Jungle. Fucking. What's that song with the thing? You know what I'm on about?
Concrete Jungle.
Yeah, fucking. There's a song, but they should have done that one. It's got a concrete jungle in it, so.
I thought it was an interesting opener, actually, because I mean, you've been watching the English language versions of these over the last however many weeks we've been doing this, 10 weeks. I've been watching the Japanese versions, and when it starts off, I actually had to check the language setting on Netflix to make sure that I had the Japanese setting on, because it starts off with an Olivia Newton-John performed version of Take Me Home, Country Roads, and I thought, oh, hang on, cheers, yeah, R.I.P. But I like that is the foundation of it, and that theme is beautifully woven into the score throughout the film, and that song itself comes back into the film at key moments during it. And it's really the foundation of everything. It's not just the setting of the film and the sort of emotional stance that we find the main character. She does feel very isolated. She's kind of like dreaming for more, essentially, and she's in her own sort of like magical dream world. She's not really a functioning human being. She stays up ridiculously late. Yeah, well, yeah, me too. Like, stays up ridiculously late, is sort of like head in the clouds, quite literally, later on in the film, where she's coming up with her the imagery for her story. And yeah, she's an artist needing to create. And I think if you are sort of like artistically minded, or you've worked on any project, whether it be a song, an album, a novel, a painting, whatever it happens to be, I think she's a really good character to connect with, because I think she does exemplify all of the hardships, all the highs and the lows of being a creative mind in some way. And that's what I was interested to get your opinion on during this, throughout the course of the film, where she wants to be a writer and develop her creative writing some more. The process of that. And I mean, I've chatted to you. Like, I know that you stop up late, and you know, when your ideas, sometimes ideas are there, sometimes ideas aren't there. So, in terms of that respect to the character, setting aside the love story, which you've been quite vocal that you didn't connect with, but what about that side of the film?
No, I think the great thing is because she did, like, because she obviously wrote lyrics and stuff, and then, you know, did the whole obviously, you know, writing a story. It's that kind of, I think, that escape from, like you say, because she's a very different person to what society sees you as. I think that's done very well. It's that kind of escape from reality, something a bit different. You know, it's, yeah, I think that's not right. And it's kind of like those things of when you see non-fiction novels. I don't disagree with them existing. I just, sometimes when people will write a non-fiction novel or whatever, well, not a novel, but, you know, anything, like, even if it's got, you know, loads of shit in it, like pictures about planes and that kind of stuff. I get it, factually, they kind of need to be there. But sometimes when people write loads of non-fiction novels and this and that, I'm like, but you live in the real world. Why do you not want to go to your own world? Why do we just continue to? But obviously, there's a reason for it. And obviously, you know, everyone's their own thing. But like, I really like the fact that she was just, it was that escapism. That's why obviously we, you know, really, really like Alice in Wonderland. It was that whole just go into something completely different, something that doesn't make sense to the naked eye, something that's like, it might not make sense to you, but there's a whole world about it. Like, there's a whole different, like, everyone's brain is their own world. And I think that was delivered very, very well. Yeah, so I did like that aspect of it, and I thought she was a great character. I really liked the voice. I really liked, you know, her mannerisms. I don't know why she had short hair. Don't get the Japanese girls having short hair. Like, I'd rather them grow it out, but we'll gloss past that one. But you know what I mean? It's yeah. I thought she was a really great character to connect with in that way. I thought the guy was, I think he was cool. At first he was annoying though. At first I just found him irritating. Kind of reminded me of what's that dude's name in My Neighbor Totoro? The annoying guy.
Yeah, I can't remember his name.
He literally had no place there though. Come on, he was a twat. He
well,
was like Tom Bombadil.
There is a bit of a subplot in this film, which ultimately, when you watch the rest of the film, doesn't really lead to all that much. There's that guy from her class who professes his love for her, and she says, "I only see you as..." She friend zones him, basically. She says, "I only see you as a friend." That character
was a weird scene. I found that really weird.
Well, I'm like, that scene never really comes up again in any sort of meaningful way, in any big plot-driven way. I think you just sort of look at that scene. You talk about this in other reviews that we've done, where you say that you're not opposed to things just happening. Like, it can enhance the character. It doesn't have to be this big pivotal plot thing.
I think with things like that, when things just happen, like you say, it doesn't have to enhance the plot or whatever. I think it makes it more real. I think I think obviously, if you've got, let's say, a 2-hour movie and you've got half of it with just random shit happening that means nothing, I get it. To a point, you're going to be like, oh, feels all kind of. I get that. Like, people obviously want things to constantly keep moving. It's like the whole, people always say stuff like in novels and stuff, every page you want conflict on every page, even if it's the smallest thing where someone just doesn't agree with something, or they've done just a side glance or something. You just want some sort of conflict. I get those kind of things, but I think to have, you want the world to feel lived in, and I think this is one thing that does really work. It feels like the world is lived in, and it's not just a case of like, okay, this is a movie. It feels like there's actually a world around this. I think there's a lot to be said for that, and I think sometimes things do just happen and they don't need a reason. So I get that. I just found it really weird. I found it a really weird scene. I think it's because they were kids and he looked absolutely devastated, and I was like, mate, you're fine, like, chill. And it was like, in my head,
we've all been there. We've all been there.
Well, I mean, he was just, in my head, I was like, you look like you're just upset because she's basically saying, yeah, I like you, but you can't put it inside me. And I'm like, basically.
Oh no.
And I was like, well, you know what? That's why he's sad.
Shit. Oh,
I mean, To be
How
fair,
do you move off of that?
it
Yeah.
was no. I just found. I think there was a lot of things in this, like I say, where there were just little moments where it doesn't have to necessarily mean something, it doesn't have to lead on from it, and I think that is great. And I do like those things. Like I say, it makes the world feel lived in. So I think that was captured really, really well. Because the first thing I noticed about this was the world building. Not I say world building. I don't know, just the right phrase to use completely. But I was like, no, I really like this. I really like the atmosphere. I like the way you saw these characters. I think that was one of my favorite bits.
Yeah, and even though that scene doesn't ultimately lead to all that much, I think it is a great sort of snapshot into what it would be like in the life of a 14-year-old schoolgirl, and you have childhood crushes and whatnot, and it's just the sort of like a day in the
I'm
life
trying to
kind
remember who
kind
my
of
childhood
aspect.
crush was when I was 14. Was that a thing?
It was for me, but like, yeah, I don't know. People are different.
I don't know. I just kept myself to myself and just doodled. I can't draw.
And but it was interesting earlier you mentioned sort of like Alice in Wonderland, and there is a huge Alice in Wonderland comparison with this
Or the
movie,
fucking
which
cat
is
and
the cat.
with the hat, the one that looks like the fucking the rabbit. He reminds me of the rabbit because of the but like he's my favorite. I liked him.
Well, we talked about that in Totoro, and that there's probably going to be countless more Studio Ghibli movies that also follow that. I seem to remember Spirited Away being very, very, or having a lot of parallels to Alice in Wonderland as well, which is only in a couple more weeks' time. So, I'll be able to see if I was correct about that. But yeah, I think this film, when it begins, you mentioned like the world building or like just setting the scene, setting sort of like the emotional state of the main character, her home life, her parents, hard workers and whatnot, sort of like a small, compact place they live in. But I think the film, through its visuals, very effectively shows the isolation of the main character and how there's a scene where her parents are talking to her older sister and the camera pans to the room, the dimly lit room where she's on her own, whether she's sort of like reading through her books or writing lyrics or whatever she's doing, that she is very cut off. And I guess initially she doesn't really have much support in terms of her own creative passions. Her sister later on in the film, she's really pressuring her to do good in her exams. But yeah, I'll get to that in a bit because I'm sort of getting off track of the Alice in Wonderland thing. But it sets the scene great in this sort of, dare I say, kind of mundane world that she's living in, with like the home life, the isolated home life, and the school life and whatnot. And it really does kick into it. Like she says, like this, she even says, like, this feels like the beginning of a story. She says when she's following this cat and it's on the train with her, and the cat gets off and she's following it around up these little like these big hills and places that are restricted. I guess they all have like no entry signs on and whatnot, which takes her to the antique store, which it is the beginning of a story in the sense of we're watching the film and this is where the story's sort of getting underway. But the antique store itself is the catalyst, no pun intended, or actually pun entirely intended, for her own story that she writes later on in the film. Like she gets inspiration from that figure of the cat, the Baron, who forms one of the main characters of her story that she'll go on to write later. So I thought that was really interesting. You imagine it like in any other Ghibli movie, if it was this, like high fantasy one, she'd follow that cat and she'd go into the antique store and it'd be this magical world filled with magical characters. And it isn't. It is literally just an antique store with, like the old guy who runs it, very, very nice guy. And ultimately the one who she realizes is the guy that she's got a crush on, who she saw his name in all of the books that she's been taking out the library.
Do you know what's weird though? It's kind of like when you get to the end of the book or a movie or whatever, and it turns out it was all a dream.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about that?
Well, that it was just all a dream and nothing happened, and it was all. I do think it's a bit of a cop out sometimes. I think it depends how it's handled, because there's always that, was it a dream or wasn't it? Was it actually really real? Something like Alice in Wonderland or Labyrinth, for example, ends that way. Or something that has a question mark at the end, in terms of Inception, Christopher Nolan movie.
Well, Alice in Wonderland literally just wakes up and it's like, oh, Cool. Like, do you know what I mean? It was all like in both of them as well, and I think they were. I mean, they were done quite well. I think, but it was obviously they were almost 200 years old now. Like, do you know what I mean? But that's actually really weird to think about. I don't know why, but that's really weird to think that they're almost 200 years old. But anyway, obviously that's done quite well. But the reason I say that is because it's a similar sort of thing where, like you say, you'd expect this to happen, but it's just reality. So it's all in their own head. So it's that kind of like, and I think this is done quite well in the sense of it's not done as just a whole, oh, it was all a dream, blah blah blah. It's kind of like you see her kind of go into her, like, remember? Do you ever watch Bridge to Terabithia?
No.
Do you know what it is?
I think so. No, I think I'm thinking Where the Wild Things Are or something. No, what's that one?
Yeah, so basically it's these two kids, and they just go on like a little adventure. I can't remember, like what, 10, something like that. But anyway, they go on this like little adventure into like the woods near them. And their whole thing is like the girl, because the guy just like, why are we going to the woods? And she's like, oh, don't you see like the trolls and stuff over there? They're trying to take away their kingdom. And he's like, there's nothing there. She's like, right, just close your eyes, do whatever. And it's this whole just, live in your own imagination. And then when he lives in his own imagination, they go to this forest, and there's like these giant like mountain trolls and blah 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 blah. And there's this whole like bridge and a castle, but none of it is there. It's all done as a whole. This is living inside your own head, which I think those kind of things, it can be done very, very well. And I do, as I say, the whole it's a dream things not happen. I think there's a right way to handle it. It's like you say, it can be a cop out. I think if you just get to the end, well, it was all a dream, you're like, ah, cool, bro. You're like, it feels like it didn't happen. But I think there is a lot to be said for things happening in people's own heads, and it really shows how the reality away from actual reality was a lot better, a lot more interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the whole sort of like following the cat into this world, I really did perk up. Like when she was following this cat, I was genuinely curious. I was genuinely interested. Like I wanted to find this cat. Like that was the moment in the film where I got really engrossed in the story and wanted to see where it was heading.
Yeah.
And then we get to the antique store. Nishi, who's the grandfather of ultimately the his grandson, is the one that she falls in love with. I really like his story as well, and we don't really get much insight into his story until towards the end of the film, but he does show her this old antique clock that he's got, where there's this big ornate clock, where there's these little figurines of dwarves sort of mining, which I thought was really cool. Nice. It reminded me of Snow White or something like that. And then this clock, when it strikes the hour, tells the story of the king of the dwarves who was in love with this fairy princess who turns into a sheep. And every hour he sees her, and then, he has to go back to, I don't know, the land of the dwarves, and she turns back into a sheep. And it's this undying love for her that he has, but ultimately he can never be with her. It's this like unrequited love across the ages. And you don't really pay that any mind, but it's not until the end of the film where we get this beautiful, it's when Nishi's asleep in his armchair and he's dreaming, and we find out that, many, many years ago, there was this woman who he loved, and he went to this store and he bought the Baron, the cat figurine, and the Baron figurine had a partner, like a female cat that it was with, and these two figurines were a pair. But he managed to get the one, and his lady love had the other one, and it was, they were trying to get together at some point so that, well, they could be reunited, of course, but also the figurines could be brought together again. But then the war happened, and it just never happened over all the years. It could never happen. It never happened. And the story that Shizuku writes and hands to him, because she really wants to get his opinion on it, that story, it might not speak to, like thousands or millions of people or whatnot, but that story means everything to him, because in that moment, it brings his sort of like lady love back and the memory of her. And also Baron, like Baron's now a main character and in this story as well. So it's a closure to his story too. And I thought that was beautifully handled, especially how in his dream, his lady love walks through the door, but he wakes up, and then seconds after, Shizuku walks in with this story to sort of give him that, I guess, like emotional release, really, or some kind of catharsis of, the lady love that he never got back with. I absolutely loved all that stuff, and I think it's such a great commentary on art or a story, a piece of music, whatever it happens to be, being able to touch someone emotionally. Like, there is a story there to be told, and someone is going to take something away from that story and carry it with them. And I thought that was a really sweet sentiment as well. And the fact of how honest he is with his critique on her story. She says, like, look, I want you to tell me exactly what you thought of it. And he says, it is a little bit rough. It's a little bit unpolished. It's the first story you've ever written, but it has shown me. There's the analogy of the rock that he has, like I guess like a piece of coal or something, isn't it? And it's got the emerald stone in the middle, like a diamond in the rough, I guess. And he says that me reading this story now shows that you've got the emerald. You've just got to polish it a little bit more, and over time, sort of nurture this thing, this spark that you have, and it's there.
The thing that's always tough for me with creative things is the amount of times I'll be like, oh, okay, this is done, this is cool. And then I'll look at it, I'll be like, oh, I could add this though. And I'm like, just leave it alone. It's done. you've done it. And for the amount of times though, I think that's like, that's one thing for myself personally. Like, a story, lyrics, whatever. Just be like, oh yeah, but you can always change this. And I think there is something to be said for those rough edges in things where you just go, just do you. It's nice to have those. Like, who was it that whoever wrote To Kill a Mockingbird? That was the only thing she ever did.
She did a sequel, didn't she?
I feel like she did a sequel. Like, what was it, like 40 years later? Then
she was pressured into it, I think. Yeah,
it was like a weird, like it's one that no one really thinks about. It's like she did To Kill a Mockingbird. It did really, really well, and that was it. And she probably just sat there and like, done it. Completed it. She went all J from in between, and she had completed it. Mate. That was it. Being an author, done it. But like, there's something to be said, I think, for those rough edges. And I think it's quite nice with that analogy. And it's kind of like finding yourself within this, like, because you have to get past the shit to get to the good stuff.
Yeah.
Like it's one of those it's one of those things, and I think even like, and I have to remind myself of that if I'm writing anything or doing whatever, because sometimes I'll be like, this is fucking awful. But I'll be like, no, just keep going, because you keep going, give it an hour, it'll all become really cool. And then you'll just go back to that another day and go, yeah, what was I thinking? Let's change that. And then suddenly it just becomes a good thing. But yeah, I think that is a really cool analogy. And I think it does step through the process and how people do it really, really well. And not everyone's got the same sort of process.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think this film shows sort of like the entire process, really, and surrounding life with that. First off, let's sort of like address why she gets into storytelling or wants to write a book, wants to write a story. She's already a keen creative mind. She's reading loads and loads of books at the library. Her whole life is consumed by books. And, I guess if you want to be a storyteller, you've got to immerse yourself in the world of as many stories as possible. You've got to be a keen reader yourself in order to take ideas and be inspired by. If you look at some of the greatest creative minds out there of original ideas, take like I don't know, George Lucas, for example, right, with Star Wars. He was inspired by stories that he'd seen, like Flash Gordon and a lot of the pulp adventure serials that he grew up with. Kurosawa films and stuff. So he took ideas from that, but created his own thing. And I feel like even from the beginning of the film, we see that, where she takes all of these books out. She's a keen reader, writing lyrics and creative writing. All the seeds of everything is there. But initially, when she decides that she wants to write a book, it's almost in retaliation to the fact that this guy that she has a crush on and that she's in love with, he's going off to Italy to be an apprentice, to be a violin maker. And, that's what he wants to do with his life. He's got this apprenticeship. He's going to be moving country. He's going to be gone for a couple of months, with a potential that he could be gone for like 10 or more years if it takes off and he gets a job there or something. And she's worried that he's completely out of, she is completely out of his league, and that he's moving forward and she's essentially staying where she is. He knows what he wants to do with his future and she doesn't. And, I feel like we've all gone through situations like that. I mean, I certainly have, in like relationships, or whatever it happens in the past, where sometimes you do get hit with a sense of like an inferiority complex, like, am I actually good enough? Because we've all gone through that point in our lives where we don't really know what we're doing and we're trying to find our own path and things like that. And I think that's wonderful how that's shown in the film, and I think it's very real. And ultimately it's through that idea that she has in her mind that she's not good enough, where she's like, I want to do something for myself. I want to get something out there that's tangible, that's creative, to prove initially to everyone else, but I think to herself as well, that she's got what it takes and that she really believes in this idea. And I think when she gets hit with that criticism, that it's a little bit rough, it needs some polishing, the ending kind of doesn't work, she breaks down into tears, and I think that's more maybe a relief that she has produced something of like artistic worth, that because that's a very vulnerable state where you hand something off to get someone's opinion on that you've worked really, really hard on. But I think maybe in that moment she realizes that I can't just do this to win the approval of someone, like it's got to be for me, maybe.
Yeah,
I don't know.
The biggest thing when you do any sort of creative outlet is it's always just got to be for you. That's where the best stuff comes from, because you are always your own, like you're the best critique and the worst, because you become so attached to a story or a song or whatever, and sometimes it's hard to see the flaw. Like the amount of times authors will write a novel and be like, yeah, cool, when they finished it, and then the editor will come back and there's like 500 spelling mistakes or whatever that they just glossed past. Great novel, but obviously being so close to reading it over and over again, you get what's the thingy eye, screen eye, or whatever you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
And you just kind of blur to it, so it's, oh yeah, there's a spelling mistake there, so that obviously that second opinion helps. But I think a lot of stuff has got to be done for yourself, because like you say, like she breaks down crying, and it's kind of like those things of someone saying, oh yeah, the ending's quite rough. That kind of shows obviously she values the opinion of someone else, but it's one of those things of like, just because someone else says the ending's rough, right? If you truly believe it's great, then I mean, always, if you want to get, opinions and stuff, listen to that and do whatever. But I think a lot of it has to be done for yourself, because I think it's really, really powerful if you go, right, I want your opinion on this, and someone goes, don't like this, probably should change this. And they turn around and go, do you know what? I understand that, but that I'm keeping, you're 100% wrong. I don't care. That's staying. It needs to be for that. So it kind of does show, obviously, like you say, to win the approval sort of thing. And I think it's a good kind of lesson of, you need to just do this for yourself. That's where the best stuff comes from. That's where it's fun. That's where you're not sitting slaving over something going, right, I've got to do this because I need to make some money, or do you know what I mean, win the approval of someone.
Yeah. We've got a comment from Carl who says, will we ever see Dale's writing published? Would really be interested in reading it.
Never know. One day. just not today. Give me the weekend.
What was I going to say? Another aspect that I really like is I really like how her parents are portrayed in this, actually, because the expectation is that, well, they wanted to get good grades, and her sister is probably the most vocal one out of that trio, out of her parents and her older sister, because and the main character even snaps back at her older sister saying, well, you only work part-time jobs here and there, like you never did anything. And I think that's probably why her sister is being hard on a little sister, like, don't make my mistakes, like push yourself, like this is the time to do it. But I really appreciate how her parents sort of come around to idea. Like she says, like, I'm not doing any studying, I'm working on something at the moment. And she doesn't really open up and tell them that she's working on a story or writing a book or anything. She just says, like, look, what I'm doing at the moment is really important to me, and this needs to take priority over anything, even over my grades, even though they're slipping. And her dad, like, I was expecting them to, to be really shout at her and be really authoritative with her. That's the expectation, but he's actually really cool with it. And he says, I believe that this means everything to you, and I want you to do the right thing. So if this is the priority, give it everything you've got, but realize that, if it doesn't go right, it's a lonely path you walk. And I don't think he's saying that to be a dick move. I think it is just a genuinely like good sort of like cautionary tale. Like, if you believe in this artistic pursuit, and you don't care about exams or grades or going to high school or anything like that, and you want to give everything you've got into this that you believe in, that's fine. But if it all goes south, it's also on you, because you've got to make this happen. And if it doesn't happen, that's also on you. And I think that's really, really sound advice. And I was like, yeah, like, way to go, like, supportive parents for like a creative endeavor. By the end of the film, once she's got sort of like, I guess, an initial rough draft of this book that she's produced, she says that, I'm going to focus on my grades now. I'm going to focus on getting my grades and going to school. And like, that's not to rule out that she's never going to come back to this story and refine it. I think the main thing was that she was just able to produce something in like 2 months' time that she can be proud of and say that she did. And I think that's sort of like the main takeaway. I was curious of where this story might lead, and I actually found that there's quite a few of these with these Studio Ghibli films. In 2022, there was a live action version produced, which serves as a sequel to this, which picks up however many years after the fact when she's in her 20s. Not to mention, in the actual Studio Ghibli line of films that we'll be reviewing in a few films' time, there is a spin-off movie called The Cat Returns, which is based around the Baron character that's featured in this film. So, yeah, quite a big impact on this one. If I was going to offer any criticism, the ending does feel quite rushed. There's this wonderful moment, it serves as the background for this video, where he takes her up, so her crush takes her up to this really high vantage point to look out across the city. It's absolutely gorgeous animation. Like, they're waiting for the sun to rise, and just this beautiful background art that's been produced for this film. And it does really... Go on, sorry.
I was going to say, why don't we have any animated soap operas? That's the thing. We don't, do we? As far as I know. The only reason I say that is because you mentioned the ending, and it ends in like the way the credits go up and all that, and you still got the people walking. It's very sort of how some old video games I'd play, ended, or how like you get like that, serial drama would end. You'd have the people in the background. So that's why I thought of it. But yeah, we don't get any of that, do we?
Not really. I'm wondering if there's any examples of that. There might be that we just don't know about. But yeah, that's fair.
I think when it comes to like dramas and stuff like that, I think because the thing is you're crossing two very specific, not very specific audiences, but like EastEnders, Coronation, those kind of people. They'll just sit there. They just come in from work. They just sit there. You're very NPC people that watch that, right? And it'll be like, oh, it's a cartoon, it's for kids. Like, do you know what I mean? That's their kind of mentality on it. So I think they wouldn't do as well. And then if you've got it was kind of like only yesterday. So there was another anime that was like something businessman or whatever, very sort of drama like, and it just wasn't for me. I was like, I was expecting anime this kind of, so I guess you're crossing over to just a thought I
had. What I liked about this, just in terms of the setting for this, is that she at the beginning of the film, she was quite critical of how the environment that she was in, concrete roads, and taking the mick out of it, basically saying that, oh, everything's all built up now, it all looks the same, it's a horrible concrete jungle that we live in. And then when we have that, we didn't even talk about this, but like when we get a glimpse into her book, this very dreamlike fantasy of her flying through the clouds with the Baron character, and there's all these like gemstone skyscrapers and clouds that sort of like a mirror image of the city that she lives in, but it's all wonderful and ornate and beautiful, precious gems and flowers and whatnot. It's this very idyllic fantasy image of the city that she lives in, and by the end of it, she's just sort of getting a glimpse at the city that she lives in, but from a different perspective, literally and figuratively. And she sees the beauty in it when that sun rises, and it's the background of this video. She's just, it almost feels like it's her fantasy story come to life, and it's really there. But then we get this very quick exchange at the end where her crush is just like, hey, so like, I'm going to be going to like make violins again, or I'm going to be going to like high school, I'm going to be gone for a while, but like, we should get married. And she's like, yes. And then the credits hit. I was like, wait, whoa, what? And the romantic in me is like, yeah, I want to see, he's going to be going away, he's going to do what he wants to, she's going to find her path, and then they're going to get married. I'm like, but also they're 14 years old, and he's propose and say like, "Hey, we should get married. Like, will we marry?" It's like, do you ever
Isn't
do
that
that
like
at
a
school
thing?
where like people had those like jelly sweet rings and they're like a
I was
promise
going to
ring
say,
or
isn't that like a
something?
thing that kids do? They're like, oh, we should get
Yeah,
married and stuff. And
yeah.
it's like,
It never
I'm
happens.
sure when I was a kid, I'm sure I promised to marry some girl when I was like 5 and I
Yeah.
haven't seen her in years. And, you know, I'm sure that's the thing. I probably owe her a phone call at some point. But, you know.
So that's what I mean. I want to sort of go like, yeah, they'll be together, but also I'm like, oh, they're 40. I don't know. To me, the ending did feel quite abrupt, and then it was just credits and Country Road, Take Me Home, and the credits were going up. So
I don't like that song.
Do you?
No.
That's a beautiful song.
It's not that great. It's a bit shit, really, isn't it?
I really do like the scene where she sings the song though. You know, when she goes to I need to get the character's name. I keep saying Seiji, her crush basically, and she goes there and he's got a violin and she says, "Play for me," and he starts playing Country Road and he says, "Right, I want you to start singing because you put lyrics to it." And she starts singing her own lyrics and she's a little bit timid at the start and eventually she starts to get into it. And then his granddad comes home and they've got instruments and her granddad's best friends are there. Sorry, his granddad's best friends are there. And then they all join in and it turns into this wonderful performance of the song and she gets more into it and she's clapping her hands. And I thought that scene was really sweet. This like musical number midway through the movie. I really liked that. So yeah, to me, when I was just watching this film, it hit points sometimes where I've started to forget I was watching an animated film and I was just watching a really good drama film with these characters.
Yeah, I mean, it was delivered very well. It was delivered very, very well, and I think the animation was great on it.
The music as well. It's not Joe Hisaishi on this one actually. It's Yuji Nomi, but I really, really love the music in this one too. And then of course, the main theme, "Take Me Home, Country Roads," being the driving force for it. But the actual score itself, I really liked.
That everyone sings. There's a song that's played, and there's a certain point that everyone sings it.
Oh, Sweet Caroline.
That's it. I hate that song as well. Because the reason I hate that though is because everyone, I can't remember when it happened. It wasn't that long ago. It was about 8 years ago that everyone started getting. Do you remember? Remember when we were at school and it was like 2002 or 2001 or whatever? That wasn't a thing. It's a new thing, isn't it?
Like, singing to that?
Huh?
Singing to that specific song?
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like people have probably been singing along to it since it came out.
I feel it's become a new trend where everybody. I don't know, but I don't like that either. Just thought I'd point that out. Just not a fan of that song.
Let's I guess let's sum our thoughts upon Whisper of the Heart then. We don't necessarily need to do a ranking. We'll do that once we've done them all. But
no, it's good. No, it's good. It's good. I would rank it up there as one of the better ones. I don't want to say it's not good. I just like something a bit more. I think her as a character, I think she was great, exciting. I think there was a good message behind it. I just think it was very day in the life kind of thing of happening, and I just wanted a little bit more excitement, I think. I don't like people falling in love. I don't like people falling in love. I don't like it. I don't want people to be happy. That's basically my opinion.
Wow. I absolutely love this one. This would, if I'm just sort of glancing at the other films, this would be high.
In movies and stuff where people's lover gets killed in front of them. So that's me.
Wow. This would rank really highly for me. I love the main character. Just the voice acting, the way that she was animated, and just her drive, sort of that that artistic spirit that's within her, and overcoming her own self-doubt and whatnot, and sort of like leading to a uncertain future at the end of the film. I loved all the fantasy world stuff, just absolutely gorgeous animation, which we've come to expect from Studio Ghibli at this point. Sort of like the tragic story of the director as well. Just knowing that this was his only film that he directed, but a film that's about storytelling and pushing yourself to breaking point, which is exactly what he did artistically for the company and for his projects. I don't know. I think this is just a wonderful film about storytelling, and I think if you are working on a project yourself or an artistic creative person, and you ever have moments of doubt or whatnot, I think this is a definitely a worthwhile film to check out. By the sounds of it, the English dub is just as good as the Japanese language version as well. I know when you were watching it, you sort of like flip between the two to see sort of like what you're missing or what you're getting. I guess you could say from both different cuts. So I'd really recommend this one because it's not one that I hear many people talk about. When you think of like the pantheon of Studio Ghibli films, it's always Princess Mononoke, Spirited Away, I got My Neighbor Totoro, of course, and this one I'd never even heard mentioned or anyone talked about before this point, and it's definitely one of my favorites.
It's a bit like Sabracadabra. Everyone just remembers Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, and people don't talk about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I should have put a Black Sabbath reference in all these, shouldn't I?
You should. You have to wait till the next retrospective to do that, or maybe it'll be something different. Right, I guess that'll round it off here. So if you have seen it, if you're discovering this video after the fact, please let us know your thoughts on Whisper of the Heart and what you appreciate about the film, or is it one that maybe you're not too keen on? Whatever, anything regarding Studio Ghibli, please do let us know.
Just because it's a love story, that's all.
Just because it's a love story. Please do consider subscribing to the channel as well.
Does Princess Mononoke fall in love?
I genuinely can't remember. I don't think so, but I can't remember.
Let's hope not.
And that is our film next week, Princess Mononoke. I have watched it once many, many years ago. I remember absolutely loving it, and it's often regarded as one of the best, I think. So, yeah, Miyazaki. It's meant to be his magnum opus, a lot of people say, and I'm really looking forward to revisiting that one. Bath Time says, big up, lads. United versus, I guess that's meant to say Grimsby tonight.
Remember that movie? Grimsby.
I did, yeah.
Brothers Grimsby, or whatever the fuck it was called.
I watched it about 2 years ago. Yeah,
with
Sacha Baron Cohen and Mark Strong,
where he gets inside an elephant's vagina or some shit.
Yeah,
that was a good movie.
Can you imagine filming that? Just like, what am I doing with my life?
No, imagine filming that and being like, they're paying me £2 million to just do this. That's basically what it would be.
To jerk off an elephant. Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. I don't know how I got here. Don't know how this happened. Most expensive wank in the world.
Right, and on that bombshell, I think we'll round it off there. So, yeah, tune in next Wednesday for Princess Mononoke. I'm looking forward to it. See you, everyone.